Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello, welcome. Joining me today to share the 10 books that had a major impact on her life and work is psychotherapist, consultant, speaker, and author Tamala Floyd, whose work focuses on helping women identify and heal emotional wounds that impede their success in life and relationships. She's also the author of Listening When Your Parts Speak, a practical guide to healing family systems therapy and ancestor wisdom, and co-author of Fiercely Speaking, a step-by-step guide for ordinary women who are ready to awaken their extraordinary voice. Tamala Floyd, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sandy. I'm so glad to be here.
It's good to have you, Tamala. So you were a voracious reader from a very early age, diving into encyclopedias. Believe it or not, of the Guinness Book of World Records. My goodness, you were ahead of your time there.
I was definitely, for a young one, reading all of that information and how it
What did you
shaped
make
me.
of it all?
Yeah, it just was a world outside of my day-to-day, and looking at all of those, the tallest man in the world, the shortest woman, it just made me open to different people, different experiences, and really want to learn more about people and the world.
Yeah. You also read several books at once. How do you manage that?
I'm doing that right now. I will have a book that I might be listening to as an audio. I have my inspirational books that I read first thing in the morning when I'm doing my meditation. And some of the books I'm reading might just be, you know how you have the books 365 days of fill in the blank. So I'm just reading maybe a paragraph. And then other books I'm reading, chapters in a day. So it's the various ways and different times of the day. And then some of the books I'm reading are related to my career. So just learning more about the things that I do and the ways in which I'm helping women to grow and connect and heal.
You have to tell me what sign you are with all that reading.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini,
I
the communicator.
Snap. Because as I was reading, your descriptions, I was thinking, this sounds like me.
Wow, really? How so?
Yeah, because I'm a Gemini too.
Oh, there you go.
I've always, got several books on the go at once.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. And they feed different things within me, right? They feed different aspects.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Not many people understand that. I'm glad you do.
No, I definitely understand.
So let's start with your first book. It was Faith in the Valley, one of my favorite women, Lessons for Women on the Journey to Peace, Iyanla Vanzant, published in 1996. I do not think that she could ever write a bad book.
Me either. Not at all. She's one of the authors that I've probably read every single thing she's written, and could have easily filled this with 10 of her books.
Yes. Easily. So what was it about this book in particular? I mean, when did it come into your life and how did it impact you?
Yeah, so I was someone who desperately wanted to be married. That was my dream, and start my family. And this book came into my life after my third engagement. And when I say engagement, I'm saying a ring and a date did not happen. So when that happened to me, I was devastated, as I would have been each time. And so this book came into my life at a time that I was in a valley, and desperate for guidance and wanting to be loved and wondering what I'd done wrong, that now a third engagement did not result in my dream marriage. So it helped me to connect to those really sad parts of myself and unfulfilled because those dreams had not come true.
Yeah, I mean, she's got an amazing story herself, and that alone
Yeah,
is, so inspirational. I mean, I can
absolutely.
never forget reading. I think it was her book on Pieces or something was in the title.
Yes,
Her
pieces.
story.
Yes, I read that one too. Right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's just unbelievable, that someone could go through so much and be the person that she is.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And what I have learned, Sandy, though, isn't isn't it our most difficult times that
Mm.
if we grow from them, we use them to help
Yeah,
other people? That's what I find myself doing in life. Those times that, cause shame or embarrassment or pain, now using them to help women in their own healing journeys.
but some people,
Yeah.
they tend to use the traumas and the difficult times as an excuse, and you can't blame them
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
they are traumatic experiences, but it is, it takes a lot to be able to move through that and come out full of compassion and
Absolutely.
forgiveness and love for
Absolutely.
people. Yeah.
I agree with that.
So
Mhm.
you read this book, and this
Yeah.
particular book changed your perspective,
Yeah.
and then the next person you met, did, did you get a
The
fourth engagement?
he wasn't the next, but I did. Thank you for that question. I did get a fourth engagement. The other thing is I realized there were things I needed to work on. The one thing that was common in each one of those broken engagement was me. So I spent some time out of relationship working on me. And by the time I came around and out of that work, he was there. And I said to myself, not for that year of not dating, I would not have been ready for him. I needed to do some internal work, emotional work, and healing before I was ready to love and receive his love. So, yes, I am married for 27 years to the fourth engagement.
Wonderful. And so that proves, doesn't it, that, even the worst things that happen to us or what we think are the worst in life, they are gifts.
They are. They really, really are. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So book number 2, Women
Yeah.
Who Win with the Wars by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, 1992.
Mm.
What a
Oh,
woman, what a book.
yes. Another person. I've read everything. I've listened to all of her audiobooks, all of her programs. Would have loved to actually attend one of her programs in person, have not been able to do that yet. But Women Who Run with the Wolves was recommended to me by my best friend. And like what I loved about this book is it helped me connect to my wild woman side, just with abandonment, just to just be fully who I am in my womanhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. With the work that you do, working with women who have trauma,
Mm,
and emotional healing, etc., and helping
yeah.
them move through the challenges just as you move through yours, are these kinds of books that you would recommend they read?
They absolutely are. I'm wondering if you've traveled with me in life before, Sandy, because when I left what I call therapy school, the very first thing I did was start a women's support group for Black women. And we were reading some of these very books that are on my list, books that were impactful to me or books that I found because I thought they would be helpful to the women in this support group. And that group went
Mm.
on for about 10 years. So absolutely, using these books in the work that I do, and I continue to recommend many of
Yeah, yeah. I'm still listening to this particular one. I've got it in the car on Audible,
them.
and
Yeah,
when I take a long drive, I listen to it. So,
yeah.
book number 3 is
Uh,
Spiritual Laws of Success, a practical guide to the fulfillment of your dreams by Deepak Chopra, published in
Yeah.
1994. Consistently, this comes up again and
Mm,
again. People's choice.
yeah. It
Mm.
does. Lovely. Yeah, this is another book that just opened my eyes to the possibility of any and everything that I want. Like the unlimitless of life and dreams and my destiny coming true. Like if I could dream it, I could be it, I could make it happen. Um, Also the power of detachment, because I would hold on to my dreams for dear life, like they have to happen in this order, connecting with these people. And the beauty of just having a dream and letting it go, like a helium balloon released into the air, right? And just let it go and allow the universe to move in the background, which is the way I live my life now. And I do the part I'm supposed to do, not that I let it go and do nothing. I do, but I'm not attached to the outcome and I'm not attached to how it unfolds.
Mm.
Yeah.
Book number 4, The Confident Woman. Well, that's you.
Thank
By
you.
Marjorie Hanson Schlevitz.
Yeah.
Published in 1989. I could not find this as a book. I could only
Uh,
find it as a 4 audio cassette
ah,
in a vinyl.
okay. Okay. So, this was a book that helped me. I think I spent a lot of because I wanted to be married, I spent a lot of my 20s defining myself by being in relationship with a man. And
Mm.
so this book helped me downplay that as pivotal in my life and looking at who I am as a woman, even if I'm not in relationship. So yeah, that was a huge one for me. Yeah.
It sounds to me like in that, place you were in
Hmm.
between the third and the
Yes.
fourth, you read some really good books that helped you navigate that space. I mean, I would think that you probably read that book
Yeah, I
during
did.
it.
I
You did.
did. I read this book and we worked through this book in the women's support group that I was running at the time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one, which comes
Yes.
up in our top 10 books of all time,
Really.
I'm interested to know when this one came into your life. Number 5, The
Yeah.
Celestine Prophecy, James Redfield, which was published in
Hmm.
1997. What point
Yeah.
in your progress did this one appear?
Yeah. So 97. So I was in my 20s, mid 20s. Yes. So this book came into my life during a time that I was estranged from my father. And I, it, the reason that this book was so helpful for me is because my takeaway from this book was for us to play with the idea that we chose our parents. And if you chose your parents, why did you choose them? So that helped me do some deep healing work around my relationship with my father. My father is a man who demands excellence, and parts of me took that demand for excellence as me not being good enough, like I couldn't measure up to where he felt I should be. And so we were estranged at the time, and I spent some time looking at why did I choose him? How has he helped? Oh, and that was the other thing. We chose them to help us in our own personal evolution. That was the message. And so I'm like, okay, why did I choose my father and how has he contributed to my evolution? And
You th-
I,
I
yeah,
was going to say, you said that your mother also taught you some hard lessons.
well, for my mom, the lessons that I learned from her, it's interesting the parents that I chose. I found my dad to be hard and driving, and I found my mom to be loving and accepting. So there was this dichotomy in me to push and drive, but then she would always tell me, do your best. Did you do your best? There's nothing better than your best. So if that's what you've done, that's good enough. So I realized that there was reasons that I chose both of them, and they were
Yeah.
a great balance for me.
You chose the right balance. It is
Yeah.
interesting. And I think, when I came to the same conclusion that, we choose our parents and we also choose our
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yes.
It makes the difficult circumstances easier
It
to,
does.
to understand and to learn from, rather than to treat them as, something that could cripple you. You can say, no,
Absolutely.
I chose this in order to grow.
Yeah. And that's also helped me with, I'm a mom of 5. It's also helped me with the part you said about we choose our circumstances to release choices my children have made that I might not agree with, and not to do to them the same thing that my dad did to me. To just allow them to have their life. This is their experience, not
Yes.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think if parents learn nothing else, learn this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Book number
Definitely.
6, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson, published in 1993. And you said that this book addressed each of your fears, chapter by chapter. Roadmap.
It did. So, I've had these big dreams of wanting to have a large impact on the lives of women, to help them with the traumas that they've experienced. But I was like, there was also this, but who am I to do that? Like, and how do I do that? And who'll listen to me? Just all the questions that we ask. And I did have what they called the border bullies in the book, who also said, who are you? Right. But this book, chapter by chapter, helped me address those fears that I had about pursuing my destiny.
And it's interesting, this is published by a man.
Hmm.
What sort of things was he addressing in each chapter?
Yeah. Well, what the chapter that we all have a dream, and that sometimes the people closest to us do not understand our dream. And we have
Mm.
to venture outside of what is comfortable in order to pursue those dreams. And on our road to our dream, that there are going to be obstacles. And are we willing to continue to pursue the dream, even in the face of the obstacle? Another thing that was really beautiful in this book, there's a point at which the protagonist meets an old man on the road, and this old man has stopped with his dream. He's gone as far as he can go. And so the protagonist believed that he'd given up. And the guy said, no, this was as far as I was to take the dream. You now are going to take it even further. So all of those messages were very powerful and supportive to me.
Mm. It
Yeah.
sounds really interesting, and I'm surprised
Yeah.
that it hasn't come up before.
Yeah. Oh, it hasn't. And
Right.
I guess it falls under allegory. I think this is, yeah. Yeah. It was really beautiful. It was really a very beautiful book. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, hopefully it'll come up more now.
I hope so, and I hope, many of our viewers will go and buy it.
Yes.
So book number 7 is Sacred Contracts, Awakening Your Divine Potential by Caroline Mace, which was published in 2003.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That book, it was one, I went into this book like a textbook. I was at the time, I was 93. Not sure exactly when I read it, but it probably was in my master's program. So very much the student, and went through this book as a student, loving Carl Jung's work. So the connection with archetypes was very powerful for me. And the archetypes that I drew when I did the cards were amazing. Some speaking to where I was at that time, and some speaking to where I was going, which I'm on that road still living those archetypes. And also the connection with the shadow side. I don't think I connected as much with the shadow side of our archetypes until I did the work of this book.
Yeah.
And understanding we come into the world, this is one more point, that we come into the world with a sacred contract that we're living out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Book number 8, a book I love, The 4 Agreements, Practical Guide to
Yes.
Personal Freedom, a Toltec wisdom
Mhm.
book by Don Miguel Ruiz, published in 1997.
Looks like I read a lot of books in the 90s, huh?
What's interesting is the 90s, the books that were published in the 90s come up again and again and again. It must have been a very fertile time.
Yes.
Spiritual wisdom was
There
emerging.
you go.
But yes, it was,
Okay, I'm not alone. I'm in good
yeah,
company.
yeah, well,
Yes, yes. Yeah, so the Four Agreements, again, another book that I used when I was working with those women. And for me, I think the biggest thing was not taking things personally, because man, did I personalize what other people said to me, did to me, treated me, support, lack of support. It was always because of me. I took it all personal. And the other thing was impeccable speech, like really being conscientious about how I spoke to other people. And was I saying what I really meant? Was I communicating clearly, like really stopping and slowing down and not just running off at the mouth, but also connecting to what I want to share and how I want to share it and how it may land for the other person.
Mm. This book is my conscience.
Exactly, right?
When I've, stepped outside the boundaries, oh
Yeah,
boy, the guilt,
right,
Mm.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
wonderful. I mean, that's it. That's a Bible for life right there.
It is. It is. Absolutely. Just those four agreements. Priceless. Yeah.
Mm. So, number 9, Conversations with God, an Uncommon Dialogue by Neil Donald Walsh, published in 1996, same decade.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm embarrassed to admit, but I am going to admit it, that I was not aware that Conversations with God was multiple books. I was only aware of the first book. And I read that book, and the impact on me with that book was I had so many questions about what I'd been taught in religion. I'm a Baptist and then turned Catholic when I married my husband. And so, but in both faiths, there were things that I just like, could this really be God? I mean, is this what he really wants, expects, would treat us, etc.? And this book helped clarify many of those questions that I had around my faith and God. The other thing that I really love is that Neil Donald Walsh was obedient in writing this book. Like, this book could have never happened because he had lots of questions, which he shares, and whether it was real and whether he's really talking to God and should he publish it as a book. And he did it. He moved forward and birthed this book to help folks like me who had all of these questions about God and what he wants from humankind. And then I later, like maybe, I don't even know how many years, I'm going to say like 10 years later, realized there was multiple books and then went back and read all of the Conversation with God.
All of them. Wow.
Yeah, all of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, this is such a popular book that when we look at the 10 best of all the 10 bests, this is
Wow.
always there alongside the 4 agreements, alongside Deepak, so I think
Wow.
you
Love it. I picked some, had
will have-
no idea.
Yes, so the next one is the last one,
Oh, yeah.
Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And who knows when that was published.
Yes.
An incredible book.
Incredible book. Incredible book. Which I found later in life, more recently, I would say in the last 10 years maybe is when I read that book. So I would have been in my 50s when I read this book. And this book helped me appreciate the power of love, and not just romantic love or a parent's love for a child, but a love for humankind and how powerful love is in healing. Yeah, it's just all of the poems about love just really, really resonated with me.
Which
Yeah.
were the chapters that touched you the most?
Oh, and I did not make a note of that. I just know that the poems of love were the ones that just resonated and made me feel that I wanted to be a greater expression of that. It's very easy to be loving to people who are loving to us or loving to our children or spouse or, partners. But what about the people that we don't know? Or what about the person who cuts you off in traffic? What about the barista who got your order wrong? Always being able to show love to people. And I have lived that more intentionally in the last 10 years since reading that book.
Mm. The two chapters that left the biggest impact on me was the one about, marriage.
Yes.
The fact that, you kind of, you, you know, you don't consume each other. You stand alongside each other and you bend
Yeah.
with each other. I thought that was very poignant. And also
Mhm.
the children, your children,
Yes.
not your children.
Right.
That
Yes.
is such an important thing, to
It
take on
is.
board.
It really is. Yeah. 'Cause so
Mm.
many parents see their children as an extension of them,
Yes.
belonging to them. They have an
Yes.
ownership of their children. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. It's a property, a commodity that they,
Right.
dictate.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 5
Yeah.
children. So
5. Yes.
you've had plenty of opportunities to put all of this into practice. How do you
Absolutely.
find it? Do you find yourself in a
Yeah.
challenging moment run into your book?
Sometimes I get it right and sometimes I get it horribly wrong, which I think is just a part of loving another, a part of parenting, part of raising our children. And we have a blended family. So I have 2 bonus children, a girl and a boy that I came to know as I married my husband and have a really good relationship with them. And then my husband and I have 3 adopted children. Yeah.
So what's the age range?
Oh my goodness. So the children are, let's see, our youngest son is 24, so we have 24, 26, 32, 40, 40, and 44.
Wow. And
Yeah.
your 3 adopted children, were they, a family of 3 or were they
Right.
children?
So that's interesting too. So my oldest child, I adopted as a single mom. When it looked like after that third engagement, I said, I want to be a mom. And I was in my 30s. And so I said, I can be a mom by myself. I can adopt a kid. So that's what I did. And she was 4 when I adopted her. And then I met my husband. And then he later also adopted her. And then together we adopted a sibling pair. So our 2 youngest, the 24 and 26, are siblings to one another.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, to adopt a child, as a single mother who has to go to work, has a career to take care
Yes.
of, that's no mean feat.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. I sometimes I think, what was I thinking? Not only was I a single mom adopting a child, knowing nothing, first kid, I also was a first year doctoral student. So that's like, how hard do you want to make things for yourself?
How long was it before you met your husband then? How long were you a single parent?
Not very long, because when I made the decision to adopt, I had a dream. And in this dream, my daughter was at the wedding. She was the flower girl to me and my husband. And what the dream message is, you will find your ultimate partner, but you have to love a child first. So I adopted my daughter in December of one year, met my husband in August of the following year, and married 9 months later in June. Well, he asked me to marry him in December of that year, but married 9 months later, in June of the following year. Yeah.
Would you say that, adopting your daughter, I mean, you had all these lessons that you learned through all these books, all these
Yeah.
opportunities to practice the teachings, and then along comes your daughter, and we all know that
Yeah.
children are the greatest teachers. Would you say that, she kind of was like the icing on the cake of your learning and growing?
Yes. Absolutely. Icing on the cake and the cake, because there was so much learning that I had to go through with being a parent, some of which we'll talk about later when I talk about the book. But yeah, there was still a whole lot of learning that children bring into your life. And she absolutely did. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break now. You're listening to
Okay.
an OBS Spiritual Book Club interview, and sharing the 10 books that had the biggest influence on her life journey is psychotherapist, consultant, speaker, and author of Listening When Your Parts Speak, a practical guide to healing family systems therapy. and Ancestor wisdom, Tamala Floyd, whose work focuses on helping women identify and heal emotional wounds that impede their success in life and relationships. We'll be back with more from Tamala Floyd after this break.
Welcome to Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Om Times Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit sedgbeer.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene keys is basically the code book of life. In the gene keys, the book is made up of these three levels: shadows, gifts, and siddhis. And the journey is through those three levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the siddhi. And the siddhis are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Tamala Floyd. Well, that's your 10 best list. Now let's talk about you. I must,
Okay.
first of all, tackle one thing. We ask everybody to give us some keywords so that we get descriptors, and find out little things about them. And one of your descriptors was happily homeless. What does that mean?
Yes, I am happily homeless. 2.5 years ago, my husband and I sold everything: properties, cars, belongings, put everything in 2 suitcases and decided we were going to travel the world. And we are still doing that. We live nowhere and everywhere. So right now I'm coming to you from Costa Rica.
Wow. So tell me how far you've gone. Where have you traveled and how long do you stay in each place?
Yes, so we've traveled to several countries in Europe. That's where we started. And, so we were in France and we were in Italy and London, Spain, So we did Europe first and also did a Mediterranean cruise. We have done many countries in Central America. We've been to Panama, Colombia, um, Belize. It just goes on and on and on. This year, the plan is to travel to Africa. So we balance our trip between living on ground. We also enjoy cruises. So we've done both an Atlantic and Pacific crossing. So with the Pacific crossing, did Southeast Asia, did Australia, Bali, Indonesia, so many other places that we want to travel. This is the longest time period that we've been in any one place. We're staying in Costa Rica for about 9 months because I'm hosting 2 women's retreats here. But we typically stay a place anywhere from 30 days to 90 days.
Wow. So you can do your work quite easily while you're traveling.
Absolutely. Yes.
What about your husband?
Well, my husband owns a tech company, so he can be, he's online with his clients, what have you. So yeah, so very, very flexible. And we
Well,
set things up that way because as a psychotherapist, I at one time had a brick and mortar practice. And so I had to transition things so that it would work with this lifestyle.
I want your life.
Well, come on. The highlight is actually when people join us on our travels.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Yeah.
thought about doing one of these 3-year cruises?
We have. That was kind of one of the things we played with early on. And then we decided, well, instead of doing, round the world cruise for a year or 2 years, why don't we actually live in all of those places and really, really feel the culture and
Yes.
the energy that just, so that's what we decided to do. But that was one of the things we played with.
So what's the favorite place that you've visited so far?
I'll give you my top 3. Number 1, Bali, Indonesia. Number 2, any place in Italy. And number 3, Spain.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you foresee ever settling down again and being tethered to the ground with another house or something?
Definitely not another home. Don't want to do that again. But I can see, and I don't think that we'll really settle down. What we might do is what we did here, extend our time in a place. So, there are years that we were in, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 15 countries, right? In 1 year. So probably tapering that down to maybe, 4 countries, 3 months each or something like that, maybe quarterly moving around versus monthly. Yeah. But as long as we're healthy, that's what we've committed to. As long as we're healthy enough to maintain this lifestyle, we will.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
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 So you're a psychotherapist.
Yes.
Did you always want to go into therapy, or is that something that kind of emerged later on?
Yeah, it emerged later on. At first, I went to school for the things my dad wanted me to be. And then I realized I didn't want to be an attorney. And so that was his dream for me. So through going to school, I took a psych class. It's like, this is interesting. And then took a social work class, which I felt was a better fit for me, and then made the decision to get a master's in social work and then become a clinical social worker.
And what made you decide to focus on women, especially women with trauma?
Yeah. Just, I think what made me, here was the shift actually. I started working with children. That was my love, I would say. All of my training was with children. I trained in schools. And so I just saw the things that children were having to navigate. I was drawn to children in protective services. But in doing that work, I realized that the moms needed help. That's where I could have the most impact, is not after the damage has happened, right? But looking at where does it originate? And so that's what made me, start looking at working with moms, and then discovering the traumas that moms were holding and had experienced. And then because those traumas weren't healed when they became moms, they were then passed on in their parenting of their children.
You know, I've just started reading Bessel van der Kolk's book, you know, and I had no idea that there was a time when psychotherapy didn't believe that women would suffer from trauma.
Right.
You know, it was being so dismissed back then. You know, that doesn't, you know, the kinds of lives that some women have, it doesn't leave a mark. I mean,
it doesn't leave a mark, right?
I won't even think that.
Yeah. Yes.
When you're
Deep and
working,
painful.
especially, you know, when you're traveling, so you're doing a lot of remote work and you're doing retreats that people come to you and stay. Yes. When you do a retreat, you know, obviously it's a shorter period of time. Do you find that people can make breakthroughs in those short periods of time in the way that they might do after a lengthy period of therapy?
Yes. And the reason that I think that they make the growth happens and the breakthroughs happen is because it's intensive. You know, you're out of your usual life, you're out of your usual environment, you're immersed in this healing activities and experiences, and you're in community. And one of the best ways to heal is in community.
Yes.
Even though I have been a psychotherapist, individual therapy, I really appreciate the value in working in community and in groups and healing in that manner.
What are the, you know, I mean, there are so many traumas one can think about, so many wounds. And in the news, certainly in England, and I'm sure this is true. I mean, right now we're seeing women's rights just completely taken away, and you know, women are being treated like possessions, which is just awful because that alone is, you know,
that's traumatizing.
Unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't have to happen. You know, what would you say is the most common cause of trauma for women?
Well, I know the question is what is the most common cause of trauma for women? The trauma that I would hate to think that this is the most common, but it is, it's so pervasive. And that's sexual abuse. And that's my area of expertise, is working with women who have a history of childhood sexual abuse. And it is more common than I'd like to admit. It really, really is.
Yes. Well, you know, just last night I was reading in Bessel's book that there was a time in America where they thought there was only 1 in a million women, you know, suffered some kind of sexual abuse as a child. 1 in 1 million. We know that, you know, the statistics are far greater than that. How do you work with somebody who's gone through that kind of trauma?
This is where internal family systems therapy has been really, really helpful. One, it's non-pathologizing. So I'm not looking at diagnosing the woman with something, but really looking at where this trauma stemmed from and helping the woman to come into relationship with those parts of herself that she has had to hide, typically because of shame, blame, embarrassment, not feeling good enough, feeling unloved. But these parts of herself that she's had to hide, to come into a safe environment in therapy to connect with those parts, because we all have a healing resource that in IFS we call it the self. And so as an IFS therapist, I'm more of a facilitator of helping a client use their self, their healthy self, connect with that, and then connect with the parts that need healing, those parts that were abused.
And is this what your book, Listening When Your Parts Speak, is all about?
That's exactly what it's all about. One of the things I was hoping to do with this book is take IFS therapy out of the therapist's office. So to bring it to folks, because there's so much work you can do with IFS therapy and the concepts of IFS on your own as a self-help book. And as you see from my list of books, many of them are self-help and help you to grow. IFS is also a psycho-spiritual model, so it does help you connect with the spiritual side of yourself and use that to help you heal also.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the, the ancestral patterns that are handed down in our
Yeah.
DNA. I did a whole series. I think it was one a month for 6 months with I've forgotten her name, but an author,
Uh-huh.
Judy Wilkins Smith, who wrote a book
Okay.
about this. And I
Okay.
mean, it was really interesting thinking about this isn't my, pattern. This is somebody else.
Yes.
And it's hard to get your head around initially. Do you find that
Right.
once, I mean, it must be such a wonderful thing for women to understand and come to terms with the fact that it's some of it isn't
Right.
them. It's
Isn't theirs.
something that they're
Yeah.
eating.
Yes. You know what? That is what leads to some deep healing. Like one of the things that we do in IFS is we help heal what we call legacy burdens, which are intergenerational traumas that have been handed down, just what you were just sharing, just a different name. And so we help the person unload those traumas and patterns and behaviors that were handed down because they never belonged to them. And so your system is more likely to release something that never belonged to you, that was passed down from parents, grandparents, and beyond, than something that comes from your own personal experience. Those traumas often are more deep seated and take more work to release. But the reason I like to do that intergenerational work first is because when we release those traumas, we actually have more access to our healing resource to help with those traumas that are from our firsthand experiences.
It's so interesting. I mean, history repeats itself. And we always wonder why. But I think,
Yeah.
we've got a clue here.
Hmm.
The ancestral patterns. And when I was doing the series with Judy, I was simultaneously, or at least my brother and my daughter were, you know, scouring ancestry DNA, to try and look at our past and see how far they could go back. And what they uncovered
Yeah.
was a pattern in my family that went through 4 generations of women. And
Wow.
when I looked at that, I thought it was just me. When I looked,
Right.
I began to have a whole other understanding of what was going on.
Mhm.
And you're right,
Yeah.
it is much easier to
Yeah.
release, say, okay, history is repeating itself, but it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. And releasing those burdens also keep them from moving forward into the next generation and the next. So yeah, so to be the person in your family to say, that's enough. This particular pattern stops with me. Yeah.
Yeah. In your
Very
book, I
powerful.
mean, do you give steps and techniques and tips and exercises that people can do?
Absolutely. All the above and meditations that also help them. So I'm looking at all the various different ways a person can connect to their internal family, to their traumas, and to their self in order to heal them. So some is meditations, exercises, journaling with journal prompts, and then also, of course, introducing them to internal family systems therapy concepts, and also the concept of, so with the ancestor piece, it's not just that these behaviors and traumas have been handed down through our ancestry, but I also connect them with wise, healed ancestors who can help in the healing process. So those well ancestors who really understand what has happened on this ancestral line and who can also bestow us with the gifts or the heirloom of our ancestral lines. We spend so much time, Sandy, speaking about the traumas and behaviors and dysfunctions that have been handed down, but we also have gifts
Yes.
handed down. And so we want access to those gifts.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody, if this was a call-in show, which it isn't, and somebody called in and said, look, I've suffered sexual abuse, um,
Yeah.
and you could only give them 3 pieces of advice, what would you
Right.
offer them?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'd offer them is deep, deep compassion for what it is that they've already experienced. Because often people have not had someone say, it was not okay. It was not your fault.
Yeah.
You are whole. You are not broken. So I want to offer that first. And then say to them that you can connect with that resource within yourself. So I want you to get quiet. I want you to get quiet and see if you can access some compassion for yourself. Maybe even put your hand on your heart, because that's where compassion is housed. So maybe put your hand on your heart and just feel that compassion. And I want you to see if you can extend that compassion to the younger you. That's what I would do.
Several years ago, more than several years ago, a few decades ago, when I was writing a book, my editor told me to look at NLP, which was just beginning to come out back then.
Yeah.
And in particular, there was a book written by Richard Bandler's wife at the time, Leslie Cameron Bandler. And she used to go, I think she was living in England for a time. And she specialised in working with women who'd been raped and sexually abused.
Yeah.
She was kind of on call with local police stations, and she would go and she would work immediately with someone who had. And one of the things she used to, and this turned me on to NLP, because I thought this is such a great way of thinking about it or helping someone deal with a situation. One of the things that she did straight away was to, do exactly what you did, but also then show them how the person that abuse happened to, whether it was an hour or a few days or a few weeks, you're no longer that person. You can have compassion for that person.
Yeah.
That's not you, the you of this moment. And so she would help them move through that, I would imagine, awful phase of we're going to carry this for the rest of their life. And by showing them that, how every part of your body changes every so many years, etc., that you're not that person. You can have compassion for the person, the you that happened to, and you can move on. And I think that's a valuable thing, piece of information to give people.
Yeah. And what you just shared, Sandy, is what we now know and practice around trauma is the early intervention. That sometimes it's not what happened to us, but it's being alone in it and then allowing the shame to grow, right? So her going to the police station immediately, we're now stopping that trajectory of the shame and blame and, because we're intervening and the woman is not alone for her mind to go wherever it's going to go related to what has just happened to her. So that was a very powerful intervention.
Yeah. So, you've just raised an interesting point there because, anyone who experiences something like that, then there ought to be a place where they can at least, like we have Samaritans in England for people who are considering suicide, a place that they could go immediately to talk to somebody, even at a distance over the phone, who can tell them these things, they can unburden themselves straight away. Has nobody started a helpline like that?
Yeah, there are. They absolutely do have crisis hotlines in the U.S. that you can call for suicide, for anything, any type of crisis that has happened to you, and training folks. And that's what I'm saying. We're realizing that intervention is necessary. The earlier, the better. And we're doing that now.
Yeah. I can imagine. You also contributed to another book you co-wrote, Fiercely Speaking, What's that all about?
Yeah. So the Fiercely Speaking book is a multi-author book where each author is writing about something that happened in her life that also helped her to get her voice. My chapter is called Healing the Wounded Mother. And so it speaks about me coming into mothering and parenting before I had done all of my own healing work, and how that then impacted my daughter and my relationship with her and what I learned from that. It's interesting that you ask about the Fiercely Speaking book in particular, because I am now working on an audio book, a brief audio book, Healing the Wounded Mother, which will be out probably this summer. And there's a possibility of creating a full book, just fleshing out the concepts that I share in the audiobook. So the audiobook will also have exercises for the wounded mother to work through. Yeah.
It's, it's appalling and amazing that, the most important thing we do, which is raise children, give birth to and raise
Yes.
children, is that there are no classes. There is no preparation.
No.
There ought to be some kind of mandate, that
Absolutely.
trained to go to work. We should be training to be a parent.
Absolutely. We get the training after we make all the mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then that poor child,
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing the audio book, and you may turn into another book. What else are you doing?
The other thing that we spoke about, the retreats. So and my focus on the retreats is healing that intergenerational trauma, those legacy burdens that in the retreats. Some of the retreats I do are women only, and some are co-ed. I have a retreat that I'm hosting here in Costa Rica that starts April 30th, and it's a 7-day retreat. I'm also hosting a retreat at Esalen retreat site in California, June, what are those days? June 23rd to the 27th. All of the retreats are in person. And then I'm going to come back. The thing that I've loved doing is I'm marrying doing the retreat, one love, with travel. So my retreats will move around as I do. So in September, I will be hosting a retreat for women in Morocco.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I really like what you're doing, Tamala.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for adding your 10 best list of
Yeah.
spiritual books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
Yes.
Truly appreciate your contribution.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed our time here. It's been
Really
very fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
You're
for more
welcome.
information about Tamala's retreats, psychotherapy services, and her books, visit tamalafloyd.com, TAMALA Floyd.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me.